In my previous life, my mother died in the Cyrus family. On the same day, I was also kidnapped into the basement and tortured to death. Given a chance to live again, I resolutely chose to climb into the bed of my enemy. In the heat of passion, he coaxed me to call his name close to his ear. Be good. Call my name. Ethan. However, my enemy's name is Cyrus, and he is Ethan's elder brother. I decided to play along with his plan, shuttling between the two of them, watching them become obsessed with me and sink for me, and witnessing the downfall of the Cyrus family. When my great revenge was finally avenged, Ethan took a fatal bullet for me. Clutching the diamond ring in his hand, he fell into a sea of blood and murmured in a low voice, "It's so good that you're still alive in this life." 1. My mother died in the Cyrus family. When her body was brought back, there wasn't a single piece of intact flesh on her. The neighbors spread all kinds of unspeakable rumors. She must have been having an affair outside and was discovered by the Cyrus family. I wonder if she had any nasty diseases. She deserved to die. On the same day, I was kidnapped by a group of men in black to the Mountain View villa. A man in the dark injected me with a large amount of medicine. And his voice couldn't hide his excitement. "She looks like her. She looks even more like her than her mother." From that day on, I began to be imprisoned and whipped. It turned out that this was the kind of life my mother had lived in the Cyrus family before she died. Until one day, I finally found an opportunity to cut my wrist with a piece of debris. The moment the blood flowed out, there was a sea of fire in the sky. The surging fire seemed to swallow me up. The next second, a wave of heat swept over, burning the red string on my hand. No. I suddenly woke up from my bed, and the sunlight hurt my eyes. Subconsciously, I looked at my wrist, and there were no scars. Before I could check the time, a neighbor knocked on my door. "Yvonne, your mother died from a work-related injury. The Cyrus family gave a large sum of compensation. You're going to be rich." I stood there in a daze, gradually unable to hear the surrounding sounds. I slammed the door shut, and my mind went blank. I was reborn. I was reborn on the first day after my mother's death. 2. Yvonne. This is the compensation from the Cyrus family. I hope you can forgive us. In my previous life, I had never received any compensation. All I received was my mother's cold corpse. The people in front of me were clearly the ones who had kidnapped me in my previous life. And the memories lingered in my mind. This girl is much younger than her mother. I wonder why the head of the family took a fancy to that old and ugly woman. Didn't we have our way with her mother before she went in? Anyway, Hanning Huitzharel. She wasn't a virgin. And no one would know if we did something to her. A burst of lewd laughter made me feel sick. Their hands kept moving around inside my clothes. And I was drugged and unable to resist. Just touch her. This girl is still a virgin. If the head of the family finds out, you'll be held accountable. The madam has been dead for so many years. But the head of the family still hasn't grown tired of this type. I'm already tired of seeing the same type of woman every time. Only then did I realize that the so-called high-paying nanny recruitment by the Cyrus family was a complete scam from start to finish. I didn't want to recall it anymore. And anger welled up in my heart. I clenched my fists tighter and tighter. And the anger condensed in my hands. In this life, I will definitely make the Cyrus family pay for their crimes with blood. Forgive you? You're just trying to settle things with money after someone died? The leader of the group wasn't angry, and instead asked me what I needed. His attitude was much better than in my previous life. I have only one condition. 3 days later. I want to work in the Cyrus family. I said coldly. The person opposite me showed a flattering smile and didn't hesitate for a moment. No problem. We'll come to pick you up in 3 days. In 3 days. I searched countless pieces of information about the Cyrus family and Mrs. Cyrus. But all to no avail. When the men in black came to pick me up, I still followed them without hesitation. Before going out, my gaze fell on the photo of my mother and me. Our two faces were carved out of the same mold. This face was both a blessing and a curse. Just because I looked like the late first love of the head of the Cyrus family. The lives of my mother and I were ruined in that man-eating place. After entering the villa, the men in black gave some instructions. And then I was led away by the butler. The head of the family isn't at home recently. You can start by working with Nanny Wang. Don't think that just because you have someone above you, you can get away with doing nothing. You have to learn the rules well if you want to stay in the Cyrus family. I nodded in agreement. Nanny Wang was dazed for a moment when she saw me. She led me to my living quarters and told me the rules. All the women in this villa looked like the same person. She arranged for me to work in the garden, a place where it was least likely for me to get close to the head of the family. Don't think about climbing into the master's bed to gain status. If you can't do the job, get out early. Do you hear me? The words were harsh, but I could tell that she was trying to persuade me to leave. However, from the moment I entered the door, I knew that I never had a way out. 3. I officially started working in the villa. Since the head of the family wasn't at home, there was very little work to do. I just dealt with the flowers in the garden every day. No wonder my mother always said that she was lucky to have found a job with good pay and little work. She also said that after working for a few more years, she could pay the down payment for a house as my dowry. Not long after, the butler said that the head of the family was about to come back and asked me to take good care of the flowers in the garden. Nanny Wang also came to warn me to avoid the head of the family and not to incur his displeasure. I gave her a sweet smile, and then turned around and changed into the carefully tailored maid's uniform. My waist looked even more slender, and it had a bit of a uniform temptation. I held a sprinkler and sprayed in the garden, and picked a few flowers from time to time. Soon, when out a low sigh, I felt a burning gaze from upstairs. He took the bait. I deliberately turned the head of the sprinkler to a different position, and the water wet my skirt precisely. I let out a sound of annoyance, and my delicate voice was enough to stir the heartstring. Then I randomly found a patch of grass in the garden and was about to change my clothes. It was a clear view from upstairs. That gaze disappeared, and the owner of the gaze appeared behind me. He carefully covered me with a blanket, blocking all my exposed parts. My face turned red, and I lowered my head, not daring to look at him. I thanked him. I took out the flowers I had just picked and gave them to him. Ylang ylang flowers? You picked these in the garden and gave them to me? Only then did I raise my eyes and meet the man's interested gaze in front of me. He was young and handsome, exuding an innate sense of oppression. I bit my lip, tears welling up in my eyes, and stammered, "I'm sorry. My mother said that flowers can be given to the person you like. You helped me just now, and I like you very much. Please don't tell the head of the family, okay?" He used his finger to lift my chin, forcing me to look into his eyes, and his gaze was flirtatious. The effect of the ylang ylang flowers was stronger than I had imagined. I turned around and walked away. I had only taken a few steps when he grabbed my wrist. I turned around and grabbed his hand, clung to his neck, and began to kiss his Adam's apple. "I feel so uncomfortable. Can I kiss you?" He didn't say anything, but he didn't refuse either. His Adam's apple moved slightly, and he began to take the initiative, holding my head in place and exploring my mouth with his tongue. "Be good. I'll help you." His hands began to move restlessly on my body, and I pushed him away while pretending to resist. "No. We can't do this here. The head of the family will beat me to death if he finds out." I covered my face and tried to run away, but the man grabbed me and pulled me into his chest. He picked me up horizontally and walked straight to the second floor of the villa. He kept kissing me as he walked, not giving me a chance to catch my breath. I let out soft whimpers. The dampness on my body wet his thin shirt, revealing his faintly visible muscle lines. I couldn't help but touch them, and his eyes became even more bloodshot. When we reached the room, he threw me onto the bed, took off my clothes, and guided my hand to touch the sensitive areas on his body. "Come on. Let you touch to your heart's content." I knew that I had won the bet. The room was filled with an amorous atmosphere. When I woke up, it was pitch black outside. The man didn't seem to notice at all. He looked at the blood-red stain on the bedsheet and showed a satisfied smile. There was nothing that gave a man more of a sense of accomplishment than a maiden's first time. He was shirtless, and there was a look of having regained something lost in his eyes. I couldn't see through him. "Do you know who I am?" I covered my face and hid under the quilt, not responding to him. He wasn't angry either. He pulled me out from under the quilt and assured me that he would take responsibility for me. After that, he pressed himself on me again and kissed every part of my body. In the heat of passion, he coaxed me to call his name close to his ear. Be good. Call my name. Ethan. My dazed eyes focused on him. Tears welled up and flowed out as I called his name. He leaned down and gently sucked my tears. Over and over again. Showing great patience. However, in my previous life, the man in the dark, others called him Cyrus. 3. I didn't get up until noon the next day. And my body was covered with ambiguous marks. Eat and rest me slowly and carefully. I'll take you to meet someone. Wearing a white dress, I looked even more like the woman hanging on the wall of the basement. A man sitting at the center of the dining table was wearing a traditional Chinese tunic suit and didn't even raise his head. I heard from the servants that you brought a woman back last night? This was the head of the Cyrus family. Yvonne's elder brother. Cyrus. This was the first time I had seen his true appearance. He glanced at me with dissatisfaction. But no matter how dissatisfied he was, that expression turned into amazement the moment he saw my face. He had said that no one looked more like the 18-year-old lady of the Cyrus family than me. The two of us sat down at the dining table. That gaze became more and more undisguised. And I tugged at Ethan's sleeve under the table. He patted my hand reassuringly and motioned for me to go upstairs first. At the corner of the stairs, I heard their conversation. Your wife can only be from the Vivian family. I'll take care of this kind of woman for you. It's just for fun. You don't need to worry about it, brother. Besides, aren't there enough women in this house? Take care of. Was he going to take me to his own side? Since that's the case, then I'll just play along with you. The drama of brothers turning against each other is always fascinating to watch. I want all of you in the Cyrus family to be buried with my mother. For, these days, there have been many clothes of the same style in the wardrobe. I didn't need to guess to know who put them there. I deliberately walked around downstairs wearing those clothes. When I met Cyrus, I fled back to my room like a frightened deer. The marks on my body were enough to make him imagine all sorts of things. The bulging veins on his forehead and his blood-red eyes were enough to explain everything. What you can't get is always the best. There is no man who doesn't like this game of cat and mouse. Recently, there have been more and more new faces in the villa. And they are getting younger and younger. During the day, I stay upstairs reading books. And at night, I fool around with Ethan until late at night. I often hold a book and ask him to explain it to me. And I don't hold back my admiration for him. He really enjoys it. When we were reading Jane Eyre, I said that he was my Rochester, and it was the love between a poor girl and a wealthy young master. But he stopped talking, his eyes flickering. He threw the book aside and started kissing me like crazy. He said he loved me over and over again. And he also kept saying that he wouldn't let me make the same mistakes. I cupped his face and kissed him earnestly. Make the same mistakes? Jane Eyre in the book didn't want to be a mistress. But in reality, I do. The Cyrus family started from the underworld. And there are countless people who want to curry favor with them. At the banquet, I secretly wandered around in a pure white dress, full of curiosity about new things. Ethan, a femme, whom I couldn't find just now, appeared in the center of the banquet hall at this moment, with a gorgeously dressed woman on his arm. Everyone congratulated them on being a perfect couple and getting married. They stood in the center like a pair of well-matched lovers, accepting the blessings from everyone. Ethan didn't want me to come because he was afraid of seeing the drama of the mistress and the legitimate wife competing for favor. Right? When his eyes swept over me, he showed a shocked expression. I shed 2 lines of clear tears in a timely manner and covered my mouth tightly. Being wronged yet sensible is the most endearing. Someone in the crowd patted me on the shoulder. Beautiful lady. Are you alone? Let's have a drink together. I turned around to look at him. And his hand trembled, spilling red wine on my dress. It was particularly glaring. It's Mrs. Cyrus. I'm blind and have disturbed your pleasure. I deserve to be punished. I deserve to be punished. He began to slap himself in the face in a panic. Mrs. Cyrus has been dead for a long time. Where is there a Mrs. Cyrus? Someone beside him asked in confusion. In my bewilderment, someone domineering lied and forcefully put their arm around my waist. She is Mrs. Cyrus. Is there any problem? It was Cyrus. The strong aura of a person who has been honed in the world of fame and fortune for many years overwhelmed everyone present, and no one dared to question it. Ethan and his female companion came over when they heard the commotion. So this is the new Mrs. Cyrus. She's really pretty. Cyrus is so lucky. The person speaking was Vivian. Yvonne's fiancée. She was dressed in bright red, forming a sharp contrast with me in my soiled dress. Cyrus thanked her for the blessing, took my hand, and kissed it devoutly. I didn't dare to look at Ethan's expression anymore. I made an excuse that I was going back to change my dress and fled in a hurry. Cyrus smoothed things over for me behind me and laughed, saying, "She's young and gets shy easily. Please forgive her." I fled to the garden, and Ethan quickly chased after me and held my hand tightly. "Let go of me. Am I a toy for you two brothers? You really make me sick. Why didn't you tell me you have a fiancé? I don't want to be the one who destroys someone else's family." By the end of my scolding, my voice was tinged with sobs. Yvonne, Ethan. This is where we started. Let's end it here too. Ethan couldn't hold back anymore and started biting my lips. The force was very strong, as if he wanted to crush me and take me into his belly. "I will give you an explanation. Trust me." I completely collapsed in his arms and let him kiss away the tears on my face. After the banquet ended, Cyrus looked at my swollen and red lips and my dress that was in a mess from being ravaged. The lust in his eyes became even stronger. The big fish has finally taken the bait. He called Ethan to the study to talk about something. I reluctantly hooked Ethan's finger and pretended not to see Cyrus's Adam's apple bobbing. "Be good. Wait for me." As soon as the door closed, I left without looking back, mingling with the crowd leading the banquet. The ultimate tug of war is most suitable for heating up the relationship. Ethan, when you find me, you must fall in love with me completely and become my most handy weapon. 5. I secretly went back to my own home. On the third day after I got home, the door was finally knocked on. But the person who came was Cyrus. What he said was impossible to refuse. "Yvonne, it's better to be with me than with Ethan. I'm the one in charge of the Cyrus family. I can give you everything you want." On the surface, he is a gentle gentleman. But secretly, he has a perverted desire for conquest. I will never forget his harsh laughter when I was beaten until I was covered in blood and bruises. All the suffering was caused by him. I pretended to be in a dilemma, and he pressed on step by step. Just as he was about to kiss my lips, Yvonne suddenly appeared from behind. The two of them quickly started fighting, neither giving in to the other. Just thinking about Cyrus's approach just now, I leaned against the wall and couldn't help but retch. When Ethan was distracted and noticed me, he got several more punches to his face. They took me back to the Mountain View villa and called a private doctor to examine me. The conclusion was that I was pregnant. The father was overjoyed and swore that he would be a good father. I looked into his eyes, and the joy overflowing from them wasn't fake. Cyrus beside us had a gloomy face and left the room. I touched the unformed life in my belly, and a tear ran down the corner of my eye. "Ethan, your family is too complicated. I'm not worthy of it. I don't want my child to be born a bastard. I don't want to face your brother every day. Please leave me some self-esteem. Consider this child a gift you gave me. Please let me go. Okay?" He hugged me in his arms and coaxed me in a low voice. There was a hint of threat in his tender tone. "Stop thinking about leaving me. No one can take you away from me. And neither can he. Yvonne, I will protect you and the child." I fell into his arms and began to cry loudly. "I'm sorry, baby. I can't let you have the blood of the enemy's family flowing through your veins. Forgive Mom. Mom wants to avenge Grandma. This child was doomed not to be born from the very beginning." 6. Ethan started to fight for power with Cyrus. He once wanted to send me abroad to have a safe pregnancy. But I just smiled and said that I wanted to accompany him through the difficulties. Ethan was sent to a neighboring city. Before leaving, he was worried about me, but I refused to leave with him. Of course I wouldn't leave. Without me, this drama would have no main character. As soon as Ethan left, Vivian rushed to the Mountain View villa in a rage. She aimed at my belly and kicked me to the ground. I let out a cry of pain. She was still not satisfied. She picked me up and slapped me one slap after another. Bitch. You're flirting with Cyrus while carrying Ethan's child. Aren't you disgusting? Look at your slutty appearance. Serving 2 men at once. You don't even know whose child is in your belly. Do you? Her long fingernails scratched across my belly. Then, with a sudden exertion, she left several bright red blood marks on my belly. I started to tremble all over. And my tone was full of pleading. Vivian. I'm sorry. I didn't mean to. Please spare me. I won't bother you and Ethan anymore. I'll leave. As long as you can let me keep this child, I'll do anything you ask. Vivian raised her eyebrows and handed me a pair of scissors. The meaning was obvious. Do you know why Ethan likes you? Ivy was his first love. But in the end, wasn't she still tricked by me into marrying his brother, Ivy? So it's not Yvonne, but Ivy. With a face like this. Don't you feel disgusted? Be good and destroy it. Let's see if Ethan still likes you without this face. Her voice had a bewitching magic. I tremblingly took the pair of scissors. And she walked behind me. At the moment when I was about to cut, she kicked me down the stairs. As I rolled down the stairs, I felt the life in my belly slowly disappearing. I covered my belly tightly until I could no longer feel any connection with him. There was a pool of blood beneath me, which looked just like a blooming rose. Ivy couldn't even take Ethan away from me. A lowly commoner. Still want to give birth to Ethan's child? In your dreams. Vivian rushed at me with the scissors. I let out a scream. The person in front of me was quickly kicked away. And a pair of shiny leather shoes came into my sight. Who allowed you to touch her face? I grabbed the hem of his pants. Looking up, I saw the exquisite embroidery on the traditional Chinese tunic suit. If you're not allowed to touch my face, then it means you can touch other parts of me. Cyrus. You really didn't let me down. You're still as disgusting as ever. 7. When I woke up, Ethan was by my bedside. There was a thick stubble on his chin. And there were dark circles under his eyes. Ethan. Where's the child? Where's our child? Why can't I feel his presence anymore? Tell me. Where did he go? Tell me. My face was pale. And I kept shaking his shoulders. The guilt in his eyes gradually deepened. He closed his lips and didn't speak, letting me hit him randomly on his body with my hands. Whether it's Ivy or Yvonne, I don't care. When there is too much guilt, it will turn into love. Won't it? In the end, I covered my face and cried bitterly. I said I didn't want to go back to the Cyrus family with you. My child died here. And I'm afraid I'll die here too. Please. Ethan. Do you love me just because of this face? Can I destroy it? If I destroy it, will you let me go? I snatched the scissors from the cabinet. And he stopped me immediately. Of course not. I've always loved you because it's you. I will get justice for you and for our child. Yvonne. This time, I don't want to lose you again. He tied a red string with golden beads around my wrist and said that he had obtained it from Nanfu Temple and that it would definitely protect me from harm. The determination in his eyes moved me. If our encounter hadn't been so unpleasant, how wonderful it would have been. I didn't answer. Afraid that he didn't love me. And even more afraid that he really did. In order to bring down Cyrus, I can only use Ethan. Hatred has blinded my eyes. I can sacrifice my lover, my child, and even myself. During my stay in the hospital, Cyrus came to see me. He still had that superior attitude and still spoke to me in a condescending tone. You've seen it. He can't protect you. Be with me, and you'll be Mrs. Cyrus. I laughed out of anger and asked him in return. I really have a good-looking face. Which makes you two brothers can't let go of me. You even want to steal your own brother's wife. Sure. Whichever of you two brings down the Vivian family, I'll be with that person. How about it? This was the first time I showed some willingness to him. I know that he has a mental illness. He has a deadly obsession with the face of Mrs. Cyrus and wants to control her. During those days when I was locked in the basement, I saw countless faces that were more or less the same. Just because I looked the most like her, and was the most rebellious, I was tortured the most severely. He will stop at nothing to get me. And biting off the piece of meat, that is the Divian family, is dust, and to cause great self-harm. Sure enough, his eyes lit up when he heard my words. He reached out and stroked my face. Yvonne. Wait for me. I just felt a chill down my spine. 8. When I was discharged from the hospital, Yvonne and Cyrus were by my side. One on the left and one on the right, protecting me. People in the hospital pointed at me and whispered, saying that I had an ambiguous relationship with two men and that I didn't even know who the father of the child in my belly was. The head of the Divian family led a group of people to block our way. It's just a fake who looks like Ivy. Is it really worth you two brothers going to such lengths for her? Cyrus. Going this far for a woman. Don't let a moment of foolishness ruin your otherwise wise life. Ethan stood in front of me. His eyes dark and menacing. Mr. Divian. Take care of your own daughter. Otherwise, the next thing that will be crippled won't be just her legs. The head of the Divian family didn't expect that it was Ethan who had taken action. After all, Cyrus is a businessman. To break with the Divian family, he needs to plan it carefully. But Ethan, I couldn't quite understand him. It seemed that he had the courage to go all out from the very beginning. He crippled Vivian's legs and snatched many of the Divian family's businesses. Sacrificing the Divian family to get justice for my child is definitely worth it. For me, couldn't fulfill my obsession. Sacrificing one child to severely weaken the Cyrus family is also very worthwhile. The Divian family gradually declined and didn't get any compensation. The Cyrus family and the Divian family went their separate ways. And the Cyrus family successfully lost a powerful ally. In this round, Ethan won. Cyrus failed both in his career and with women. Looking at his gloomy face, which seemed to be dripping with dark emotions, I was in a very good mood. Just wait a little longer. Until he reveals his fatal weakness. After losing the child, I officially became the second mistress of the Cyrus family. I learned about those shady secrets. From the high-paying job scam to the girls in the basement. If Cyrus could have his way with them, he would torture them. If not, he would give them to his subordinates. In essence, it was a huge industrial chain of trafficking women. This seemingly luxurious and magnificent Mount and Uvilla hid too many evils. I started using the excuse of depression after a miscarriage to send many servants away. On the day Annie Wang left, she knelt on the ground and hugged my legs. Crying. She showed me the scars all over her body, big and small, and told me to be careful in everything. Cyrus came downstairs. Hurry up and get out. I'm annoyed just looking at your face. Don't let me see you in the Cyrus family again. I kicked Nanny Wang away in a spoiled manner and saw Cyrus showing a satisfied expression. The more vicious and unreasonable I was, the more Cyrus liked me. He wanted me to live in the mire with him. I deliberately dropped the red string on my wrist, and Cyrus picked it up and put it on with an infatuated look. Ethan's power grew stronger and stronger, and Cyrus was gradually emptied of his power. He said that he now had enough ability to protect me, so he moved me to a separate villa. He started accompanying me to read books and practice calligraphy every day. He gave me countless pieces of jewelry and even properties. He never asked about my background or whether I loved him or not. He said he would give me the most perfect wedding and let me be his bride with peace of mind. The stable life was indeed very wonderful, but I reminded myself over and over again not to sink into this false happiness. I knew clearly that this was just the calm before the storm. Ethan, if you don't take action, then I will use myself as bait and be the key to breaking the situation. I deliberately spread the news about the separate villa, and Cyrus took advantage of the opportunity to kidnap me. In his desperate situation, he wouldn't let this opportunity slip away. Using myself as a trap is the stupidest way, but also the most fatal blow. 9. When I opened my eyes again, I was in the basement of the Cyrus family. The man in the dark wiped the knife handle, and the light reflected his face. You look most like her like this. I spat at him. You didn't even find a place without people. You're so stupid. The cold tip of the knife brushed across my face, and Cyrus licked his lips. Ethan wouldn't look at this place. Tell me, among so many women here, can he recognize you? I turned my face away and didn't speak. And he continued talking to himself. Even when you're angry, you're so much like her. Right in this basement. She had this exact expression too. It was the same excuse as in my previous life. He misunderstood that his wife had rekindled her old relationship with his younger brother. So he locked his wife in the basement and tortured her. He was most afraid of betrayal. The intertwining of love and hate made him develop a perverted obsession with Ivy. Watching those substitutes suffer was his greatest pleasure. He wouldn't take action against me for the time being. He wanted to keep me to negotiate with Ethan. When the younger brother grows stronger, the elder brother always has to teach him a lesson. I repeated the same mistakes as in my previous life and lived in the dark basement every day. All those servants I had sent away appeared here. I still couldn't save them. I learned my lesson and neither cried nor made a fuss. Cyrus's attitude softened. A ray of sunlight shone in, but then disappeared in an instant. This was the only way for me to count the days every day. Until the 13th time the sunlight shone into my eyes. Cyrus rushed in. There was a bullet pouch on his waist. And he pressed a gun against my temple. Yvonne, come with me. He took me on a wild ride all the way to a wooden house in the wilderness. The house was full of dust. And on the photo frame was that familiar face, with the woman smiling brightly. He patted the dust off the bed and gently placed me on the bed. Yvonne, I'm sorry to make you suffer for a while. After that, we'll go abroad together. Okay? His face was buried in my neck. And I couldn't move. He had been drugging me for 13 consecutive days. I used all my strength to reach for his wrist, and when I saw that red string, I was completely at ease. It was a miniature locator. And the police would find me soon. I watched him leave resolutely, leaving behind the words "wait for me." I found Ivy's diary in the house. This was the place where she had lived when she fled her wedding. She liked Cyrus. But Cyrus's indifference always kept her at a distance. So she had to seek Ethan's help. But Vivian mistakenly thought that she liked Ethan. In a plot, Vivian tricked her into Cyrus's bed. She liked Cyrus. But she was also proud. She didn't want to marry the person she loved in such an embarrassing and disheveled way. So she ran away from her own wedding to show her integrity. The last page of the diary read, "That's it. The runaway wedding is over. I hope that brat doesn't know what's good for him. Sigh. What a huge iceberg. Can it melt for me just once?" Between the lines, it was filled with the innocence and charm of a young girl, as well as the haughtiness of a young lady. Cyrus didn't cherish such a person. At night, it wasn't Cyrus who came, but Ethan. He looked much more haggard. As soon as he entered the door, he hugged me tightly. "Yvonne, I've bought a lot more books. Come home with me. Okay?" I enjoyed his tenderness. But I had to push him away. "I can't leave." I took a step back and smiled at him. "You already know everything, don't you?" There were too many emotions in his eyes. Fear, panic, and reluctance. He was afraid that I would expose the lies and not leave him even a glimmer of hope. "I originally wanted to seduce your brother. I didn't expect it to be you instead. I used you from the very beginning. Used you to deal with Cyrus. I didn't expect you to be so easily deceived. Watching you two brothers become obsessed with me and sink for me. I want to make your Cyrus family suffer eternal damnation." He forced a bitter smile. "I know. I've always known. I don't mind. Yvonne, come with me. Okay? After we get married." I interrupted him. Turned my head away. And sniffled. Ethan. Stop flattering me. I don't want to be your bride. I've never loved you. Even our child. I killed it with my own hands. From the very beginning. I never intended to let this child live." His eyes were red. And his shoulders completely slumped. I slammed the door shut, completely separating myself from Ethan. It's not that I don't want to. It's that I can't. But it's not that I don't desire to. Words like love are too far away from me. From the moment my mother died, the only thing left in my life was revenge. 10. In the early morning of the third day, Cyrus finally came back. He had a few more guns on him and a ring. He picked me up from the bed and reverently put the ring on my finger. I easily recognized it. It was the wedding ring he and Ivy had. He said he would take me to a place. I stroked his head and softly replied, "Okay." The moment he carried me out of the wilderness, countless police sirens sounded. "Don't be afraid. I'll deal with it." He placed me on the spot, turned around, and aimed his guns at the police with both hands. In the tense standoff, I sneaked up behind him and pointed the cold muzzle of the gun at the back of his head. It was the gun Ethan had left me that day. "You're just like her. You're going to betray me too, aren't you?" Cyrus gave a bitter laugh, suddenly turned around, and pulled the trigger with both hands at the same time. At the same moment, the police rushed up and subdued Cyrus. The person rushed out from the grass and stood in front of me. In an instant, 2 blood flowers bloomed on that person's chest. The pungent smell of blood filled my nostrils. By the light of the moon, I could see his face clearly. It was Ethan. His cheeks were slightly sunken, as if he hadn't eaten or slept well for many days. Blood. So much blood. I covered his chest, but it was of no avail. Blood and tears mixed together, and there was a fishy sweetness on my tongue. He tried his best to take off the ring on my hand and then took out a dime and ring from his chest. "Sorry. I still owe you a wedding. It's so good that you're still alive." He showed a relieved smile, his breath becoming weaker and weaker. And he murmured in a low voice, "I'm willing to be used by you. In this life, I finally protected you well. I finally saw my own heart clearly." But I didn't hear his last words clearly. His hand suddenly dropped, and the ring in his hand reflected the moonlight, stabbing my eyes. Cyrus was taken away, and the red string on his hand was also removed by the police and returned to me. I stroked the blood-stained red string, and the memories of my previous life connected with this life. My heart seemed to suddenly have a void in it. I had avenged my great hatred, and I subconsciously burst into tears. This day had finally arrived, but it seemed that I had lost something important again. The sun in the distance rose from the horizon, and the first ray of morning sunlight shone on me. It was warm yet blinding. Everything was over. 11. The police raided that Mount and villa full of sins. All the women in the basement were released, ranging from old to young. They all said their name was Ivy, and were sent to the psychiatric department for treatment. Whose daughters are they? And whose mothers are they? All the families that had dealings with the Cyrus family were investigated. The Vivian family, hoping to atone for their sins and gain merit, exposed more of Cyrus's evil deeds. The century-old foundation of the Cyrus family was destroyed in an instant. In prison, Cyrus had most of his hair turned white. With bloodshot eyes, he asked me if I had ever loved him. I stared into his eyes and handed him the diary through the window. "The person who loved you was already killed by your own hands. A person like you doesn't deserve to be loved at all. You don't even deserve to say the word love." He swayed unsteadily. When he saw the contents of the diary, he burst into tears like a child. His tears wet the yellowed paper, and he no longer had the composed appearance he had when we first met. After leaving the prison, I went to the hospital. The person in the intensive care unit was handsome but pale, connected to countless tubes of various sizes. The doctor said that he had been shot in the chest and the chance of him waking up was extremely slim. I didn't believe a word of it. I heard that making wishes at Manfu Temple is the most effective. Yvonne, Ethan. Wait for me. I still owe you a wedding. I donated a large amount of money for incense, but the abbot refused to accept a single cent. He congratulated me on my new life and said that the red string had played its role. I was confused. Both the beginning and the end of fate lie here. Someone has prayed for your grace for a whole lifetime. In a trance, I remembered that in my previous life, someone gently took my wrist and put a red string on it for me. It was the only bright color in the basement. 2 lifetimes of fate. 2 lifetimes of tribulations. The first was a calamity of death, and the second was a calamity of love. The abbot said that now that the calamity of death had been broken and the evil had been removed, it could be considered as the blessing I had accumulated, which could be exchanged for one wish. The moment the red string was thrown into the incense burner, someone in the intensive care unit opened their eyes. Jane Eyre finally saved her Rochester. 12. A thumped side story, from the very beginning. This was what I owed her. Since Cyrus misunderstood me and Ivy, I never saw Ivy again. Only a fool like Cyrus would doubt that Ivy didn't love him. He announced to the outside world that Ivy was dead, and in her place, countless women who looked like Ivy appeared in the family. I looked down on Cyrus and never set foot in his basement. For people from our background, it's normal to have some quirks. But that day, I saw her being taken in. Cyrus killed her mother and then captured her, who looked even more like Ivy. Her eyes were tough, and she seemed ready to face death, which was nothing like the lively and innocent young lady that Ivy was. She was more like a wild flower growing freely. I took one more look at her, and that one look led me to eternal damnation. Cyrus suddenly asked me why I was interested in his basement. I didn't say anything. Cyrus's methods had always been cruel, and I began to worry if she could survive. When I saw her lying quietly in a pool of blood, with her skin torn open and covered in bloodstains, my heart ached for no apparent reason. I went to Nanfu Temple, and the abbot gave me a string of red rope. He said that the name of this string of red rope was Rebirth. It was very suitable for her. I secretly put the red string on her, hoping to keep her safe and hoping that she would be reborn. Having been the second young master of the Cyrus family for so long, I had the idea of seizing power for the first time. Seizing power, and also seizing her. I failed. On the day Cyrus took action against me, I went to the basement. Blood spilled from her wrist, staining the entire red string. She wanted to die. How silly. If she didn't cut the artery, she couldn't die. I set the basement on fire, trying to create a fire scene and then save her. But Cyrus arrived even faster than I expected. The raging fire burned away all the sins in the basement and ended my life. In a trance, I saw the red string turn to ashes and be swallowed up by the flames. No one heard the woman's long sigh among the ashes. I never expected that I would have a chance to be reborn. I wanted to save her mother and let the mother and daughter be reunited, but in the end, I was still one step too late. I sent her a large amount of compensation and ordered my subordinates to fulfill all her requests, hoping that she could buy the peaceful life. I still didn't know her well enough. Liu planted ylang-ylang flowers all over the yard and drugged her. He flattered me, saying that he had prepared a gift for me. It was the first time I saw her so lively and real. No longer the fragile her from the basement who seemed to break at the slightest touch. It was a beautiful sight. I wanted to get close to her and possess her. This was the most genuine thought in my heart. Cyrus. This time, I met her before you. The moment she kissed my Adam's apple, I smiled self-deprecatingly. A child from the Cyrus family would surely understand her tricks? But it didn't matter. As long as it was her, I was willing to accept everything. All I ever wanted was just her. I held the back of her head in my hand and invaded her territory. Yvonne, I hope everything goes well for you. I will become your most handy weapon. Bringing down the Cyrus family is just a piece of cake. Everything you want will be yours.